No one tells you how quiet it is after divorce. Not just the silence in the house, the emotional silence. You wake up that first morning and everything is exactly where it should be, but none of it feels like yours. The bed feels unfamiliar. The coffee tastes off. You open your phone out of habit, half expecting a good morning text from someone who's no longer watching your life unfold. And even if you wanted this, even if you fought for it, there's still this ache that shows up in your chest like something's unfinished, not the relationship you. Because the strange part is, you don't feel free. You feel unrecognizable. You don't even know if the version of you that loved them was real or if it was just a performance you rehearsed so well, it started to feel like you. That's what no one talks about. It's not just the loss of the relationship, it's the loss of the identity you built around it. You weren't just someone's partner. You were the person who knew what they liked for dinner. You were the one who handled the bills, kept the calendar, made peace after the fights. You were the person who stayed even when it hurt, who tried to make it work, who believed there was still a future to save. And now, all of that is gone. But you're still here, floating, still alive but feeling like a ghost in your own skin. That's what divorce really takes from you. The version of you that only existed inside that relationship. And when it ends, you don't just lose them. You lose the self you became to be with them. Most people think divorce is about heartbreak, about missing the other person, about letting go of love. But that's not what lingers the longest. What really haunts you is the emptiness where your future used to be. You didn't just lose a partner. You lost every version of tomorrow that had their name in it. You lost the vacations you were going to take, the holidays you were going to host, the jokes only they understood, the way you could say we without explaining yourself. You didn't just lose a person, you lost a storyline. And maybe it wasn't even working anymore. Maybe it was painful and exhausting and unfair, but it was yours. It was what you knew. It was a life with a shape to it, even if that shape was bruised. Now, there's nothing. No plans, no rhythm, just space. And into that space creeps the real grief. Because if you're honest, you weren't just holding on to the relationship. You were holding on to the idea of who you were going to become. You had a role. You had a path. You had a mirror to reflect you back to yourself. Now there's no mirror. And without it, you start to wonder, was any of it real? Or did you just bend yourself to fit the shape of their love? What you lost isn't them, it's who you were with them. And the you that believed this story was going somewhere worth staying for. That's what divorce breaks, not just hearts, identity, continuity. The storyline dies, and so does the person who was living inside it. There's a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. But no one sends flowers. No one mourns the you who always knew how to keep the peace. The you who made excuses for their bad moods. The you who carried more than your half just to keep things from falling apart. That self is gone now. But it didn't disappear cleanly. It fractured. And part of you still clings to the wreckage because that version of you was reliable, predictable, familiar. Even if it was quietly dying, you weren't just in a relationship, you were in a role. Maybe it was caretaker, maybe it was fixer, maybe it was the one who never needed too much. And you wore it so well you forgot it was a costume, you forgot you could take it off, or that there was someone underneath it. Divorce doesn't just remove a partner, it removes the performance. And without that role to play, you feel naked, not empowered, not liberated, exposed. Like the spotlight moved, but you're still standing on stage not sure what to do with your hands. Because when you stop performing, all the unspoken questions come rushing in. Who am I without being useful? Who am I if no one needs me? What value do I have when I'm not fixing someone else? These aren't abstract questions. They are survival-level identity ruptures. And that's what makes post-divorce life so confusing. You're not just starting over, you're doing it without the armor you didn't even know you were wearing. And the version of you that learned to survive in that relationship, they don't come with you. They don't belong to this new chapter, but saying goodbye to them hurts just as much as losing the person you were with. There's a kind of shame that follows divorce, even when you know it saved you. It's not loud, no one says it out loud, but it sits in your chest like a quiet accusation. You couldn't make it work. You gave up. You wasted all those years, even when you were the one holding it all together. Even when the relationship was breaking you in invisible ways. Even when staying would have meant disappearing completely, you still feel like you failed. But what if that shame is actually the first sign that something truer is waking up? Because shame only shows up when you're stepping outside the identity that kept you small. And small was safe. Small knew the script. Small knew who to be, even if that version of you was secretly suffocating. Now that part of you is gone, and yes, the shame hurts. But under the shame, there's something else. Not confidence, not excitement, just a flicker of self that's never had space to breathe. The one who doesn't need to be needed to feel valuable. The one who doesn't have to perform to feel seen. The one who doesn't have to manage anyone else's emotional landscape just to keep the peace. And that flicker, that fragile, unfamiliar self isn't ready to take over your life yet. But it's watching, it's waiting. It's wondering if maybe this collapse wasn't the end of you. Maybe it was the first time you've ever been free enough to stop pretending. There's a strange pull after divorce. A loyalty that doesn't make sense on paper. You think about them when you least expect it. You revisit old memories, even the painful ones. You defend them in your mind, just so it doesn't feel like you spent years loving someone who couldn't love you back the way you needed. It's not because you want them back. It's because you want the time to mean something, because if it didn't, what does that say about the version of you who stayed? But here's the truth. You can honor what you gave without staying loyal to the version of you who gave it. That version of you, the one who made it work, kept the peace, compromised again and again, was doing the best they could with what they knew. They weren't weak, they were surviving. And now, you're being asked to practice a different kind of loyalty, not to the past, not to the pain, not to the story, but to the part of you that stayed quiet all those years, the one who whispered, "This isn't love," the one who waited patiently for you to come back to yourself. That's who you owe now, not your ex, not the relationship, not the dream of what could have been. You owe the self you abandoned in the process of trying to be loved, and showing up for that part, even if it's awkward, slow, unfamiliar, is what loyalty looks like now. There's no manual for this part, not the logistics. You'll figure those out. The house, the finances, the schedules. What no one prepares you for is the emptiness of not knowing who to be. You used to have a role. You had lines, cues, expectations. You knew how to make it through the day, even if it cost you something, even if it hurt. Now there's no script, no one asking how your day went, no one to anticipate, adjust for, perform for, and in that silence, you're forced to meet the parts of yourself you buried to keep the relationship alive. Maybe you don't even recognize your own preferences. Maybe you don't know how to be alone without feeling lonely. Maybe you realize how much of your life was shaped by someone else's moods. This isn't a return to your old self. That self was edited too. This is a first encounter with the self underneath it all. The one who didn't have room to exist while you were holding a broken relationship together. And here's what's true. This part of healing doesn't feel good. It feels disorienting, empty, even boring. You don't get rewarded for it. No applause, no milestone moment, just a slow return to something quiet and real. And if you're still watching this, if this is landing somewhere deep, you're not alone. If this video is helping you see something in a new way, hit like and subscribe to support more honest, grounded content like this. We're building something real here and you're part of it. You don't have to be over it to move forward. You don't have to be healed to start again. That's the myth that healing means closure, that you wake up one day and feel nothing, that the weight lifts and the past disappears. But the truth is messier. You'll still have moments where you miss them, or at least who you thought they were. You'll still hear their voice in your head when you do something they used to criticize. You'll still walk into a room and forget, just for a second, that you're not planning your life around someone else anymore. That's not failure. That's integration. You're not trying to erase the story. You're trying to make peace with the fact that it shaped you, and that you get to shape yourself now. Grief and emergence aren't opposites, they're partners. One says, this mattered. The other says, and now something else does too. You can mourn the love that didn't last and still move toward the self that's trying to be born. You can cry about what you gave away and still reclaim what's always been yours. You can look back with tenderness and still say, I'm not going that way anymore. That's not contradiction, that's maturity, that's healing with your eyes open. You're not rebuilding the old you, you're becoming someone who's never had space to exist until now. Someone who doesn't confuse peace with boredom, who doesn't overfunction to feel worthy, who doesn't stay just to prove they're not the one who gives up. This version of you doesn't perform, they feel, they listen, they choose, not out of fear but from alignment, and no, it's not linear. Some days you'll still ache, you'll still reach for the old story, you'll still question whether leaving was brave or just another failure. But that's part of the work. To let all of that live inside you without needing to resolve it before you move forward. You're not meant to have answers right now. You're meant to stay in the space where something real can begin. Because when a relationship ends, it doesn't just take the other person, it takes your reflection, your rhythm, your map. But it leaves you something too. A blank page. And maybe for the first time, you don't have to write a story that makes sense to anyone but you. What part of you are you finally ready to meet now that the story is over? This video is for reflection and emotional insight, not therapy or medical advice. Please seek support from a licensed professional if you're navigating intense transitions like divorce.